Hi guys, John here, and I wanted to give you my quick review, my quick thoughts on the new film Avatar. And I had a chance to see Avatar the other day, and man, it's hard to think of a film other than maybe the Star Wars prequels, and maybe a couple of others, but that have had as much hype and hoopla coming into it. I mean, there were some early, regarding James Cameron's Avatar, there were some early wild statements about how this is going to change filmmaking forever. This is the film that's going to be a tentpole thing, and a lot of hyperbole and a lot of exaggeration. I was pleased to see that as we got closer and closer to the release of Avatar, they reeled that back a bit. They stopped with the over-exaggerating about how this was going to be the greatest movie of all time and sliced bread and change the way we do everything about movies. And I'm glad that they did that. So, does Avatar live up to this incredible hype that it was given? In some ways, no, but in some ways, yes. So look, I'm not going to waste any time here. Let me just get into it. Let me first of all get what I didn't like about the film out of the way, okay? So let me get this stuff out of the way first. There have been some criticisms from early on about early screenings when the early descriptions of the film came out, that some people would say, this film sounds a little bit like a Dances with Wolves ripoff. And unfortunately, that is exactly the case. This film pretty much, the story is pretty much just the blueprint of Dances with Wolves, taken much like the way Too Fast, Too Furious, or The Fast and the Furious was a carbon ripoff of Point Break. The story is the basic story is exactly the same. I mean, this isn't really a spoiler. There's even the girl that he falls in love with is already betrothed to this warrior of the clan, and he's kind of a badass, but he comes around and starts to like the guy. I mean, there were so many identical things. It wasn't just the basic story of Avatar that was kind of a ripoff of Dances with Wolves. And I don't know why more people aren't talking about this. It's almost like people are afraid to say anything negative about Avatar. But it should be said, the story, the narrative of this film is basically a ripoff of Dances with Wolves. It's been mentioned a few times, but it really should be mentioned more because it was that obvious. And it's almost like James Cameron came up with this brand new amazing technology, and I'll get to that in a second, and this exciting new way to use it. And he came up with this great world of Pandora. And it's almost like he came up with all that first and thought that the story was going to be an afterthought. Well, go out and just rip off some movie for me. And they came up with Dances with Wolves and happened to fit into this world of Pandora and everything that he wanted to do. The narrative is a bit weak too. Like, put aside the fact that it's a bit of a Dances with Wolves ripoff. The narrative is a bit weak. There are some big cliche things. A lot of the dialogue was not very good here and there. I'm not saying that overall all the dialogue was bad. There are points that I just went, did they really just say that? And little plot devices that were pretty cliche. Remember, and I'm just trying to say everything negative and get it out of the way, that I thought should have been handled much better. With that being said, I walked out of Avatar completely wowed. When they said that they've developed this new technology that was going to kind of change the way filmmaking was done, that was incorrect. But they have developed new technology that will change the way visual effects can be perceived as being done in the future. In the same way that the original Star Wars, in the same way that Jurassic Park, and in the same way that, as bad as some of the films were, the Star Wars prequels kind of altered and took visual effects to the next level, Avatar is the next evolution of that. It has pushed... I cannot emphasize, and I'm trying not to give any spoilers here, I cannot emphasize enough how flat out gorgeous and beautiful this film is to purely just sit back and look at. And then once you get over that awe and wonder of how gorgeous this film is, you become completely floored and dizzied by the way they've managed to incorporate these new techniques of visual effects into filmmaking. This movie looks flawless. I mean, sure, there were a couple of points in the film where the animation was a little iffy and it didn't quite look right, but that was finite. That was in the vast minority of the time. This film, I mean, I literally could have just turned the volume off on this movie, not heard any of the dialogue in the story, and I still would have been wowed. And when I was talking about how the film is a bit of a Dances with Wolves ripoff, and there are parts where the dialogue is kind of weak, and there are some cliches, that's all true. But every film has its problems, and that doesn't stop it from, if you put aside the fact that it's a bit of a Dances with Wolves ripoff, it is a story that fits in perfectly with this world of Pandora. It is a story that flows pretty damn well, and utilizes, it is a narrative that utilizes the effects well. Now, a criticism can be made that this is an effects-first movie as opposed to a story-first movie. That wouldn't be a completely unfair thing to say. Having said that, it is still a narrative that fits in with the story. It is still a narrative that fits in with this world of Pandora and the effects that they want to use that become a pedestal, if you will. The story basically just becomes a pedestal to hold up this amazing experience of a movie. And really, what more is a movie than us going into a theater to have an experience? Whether it's an experience to be scared, or feel romantic, or to cry, or to laugh, or be excited. We go to the films to have an experience. And despite the shortcomings here and there of Avatar, this film is an experience. I was just absolutely floored. I know I've said that over and over and over again. I was floored by the visual wonder. Now, I've heard some people criticize and say, and fairly enough, that if you take away the visual awness of Avatar, it's just a good movie. It's just a good movie if you take away all the visual awness. Okay, that's fair enough. But the visual awness is as much a part and an element of the filmmaking process in films like this as jokes are in comedies. So, you see, to me saying, well, if you take away the visual awness of Avatar, you're just left with a good movie, that's kind of like saying, well, if you take away all the jokes out of 40-Year-Old Virgin, you just have a decent movie. But you can't take the jokes out of the 40-Year-Old Virgin. That is a part of the movie. That is a part of the experience. That is one of the elements that makes a movie a movie. And in Avatar, that visual awness is a part of it. It is an integrated part of it, and it's the essential element of the film-going experience when watching Avatar. You cannot separate it. So yeah, maybe it's fair to say if you took out the big visual awness of it, the new effects techniques and all that kind of stuff, you're just left with a good movie. Fair enough. But it is a part of it. You can't take it away. And as such, this is more than just a good movie. This is an excellent movie. Now, would I personally, it was just nominated for at the Golden Globes for Best Picture. Would I have personally given it a Best Picture nomination? Maybe. I might have given it a Best Picture nomination because, yes, despite all of its weaknesses, you have to take a film in its entirety. And in its entirety, this is one hell of a movie-going experience. It shouldn't win Best Picture, but there's an argument to be made that it deserved to be nominated for Best Picture. This is a wonderful film. It is a little bit long, but this is one of those films where the 2.5-hour runtime was deserved and was needed. Some films are 2 hours and they're too long at 2 hours. They would have been better if they were 90 minutes. This is a film where the 2 hour and 45 or 40 minutes was essential. It was part of it. It never felt dragged out. It never felt too long. It never felt like it was going overboard. It was the length that this particular film, should have been at. So overall, I had a wonderful time watching Avatar. I thought it was a great experience. Yes, it's a bit of a Dances with Wolves ripoff. Yes, some of the narrative is weak. Yes, there are some dialogue problems here and there. But, overall, as a film-going experience, all those things were still good enough to go along with the great visual effects to make a really good, fun, enjoyable, and memorable movie-going experience. Overall, out of 10, I'm going to end up giving Avatar an 8.5 out of 10. Really good flick, really fun. I encourage you to go see it if you haven't already, and you probably have. Anyway, that's my review for it. Until next time, I'm John Campea.